Now, I want you to think for a moment about how you communicate with your friends and your family to this day. You might pull out your cell phone and you might send a text message or post a tweet, Facebook message, Instagram, TikTok, anything else of the sort. So, from that standpoint, you have instant access to communication. In the era of the 1830s and 40s, there was no instant communications. Matter of fact, when Andrew Jackson fought the British, the Battle of New Orleans, that actually occurred after the United States had signed a peace agreement with Britain. They fought a battle not knowing that things had actually ended. Imagine that. In my hometown, about 30 miles away, there was a battle of the Mexican-American War that was actually fought after the war had actually ended. There was no Twitter back then. There was no email. There was no text message. There was no wire that basically said, hey, stop fighting. So something might actually occur 2 months after an official end to something. Eesh. That's not good. Okay? The only way to really get proper information to and from would be direct person to person discussions and transport. So somebody would have to go horse ride through enemy lines, across countries, across rivers, just to get a message across, oftentimes not arriving. So that made things inefficient, treacherous. Some things needed to change. Well, in this era, you have a gentleman by the name of Samuel Morse, who had the idea that by experimenting with electricity, you might actually be able to send some sort of signal across an electric cable. And the signal might be able to convey various different messages. So, how would an actual wire convey a message? At that point in time, that wasn't necessarily feasible. What was feasible might be able to send various different pulses of electricity across a wire. Samuel Morse had the idea that you could send various different pulses that could be received. Those pulses could be deciphered into a message. So instead of sending a text, BRB, TOMG, instead of doing that on your phone, you could send an electric pulse across wire and develop a various code based upon those pulses. So Samuel Morse developed a Morse code, his Morse code, where you would have alternating long and short bursts of electric current that would represent individual letters. Beep, 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 beep. Things along those lines. It sounds kind of silly. I know, it's me. Otherwise, though, that Morse code could be deciphered into various different messages and sent along electric communication wire and received at a receiving station, therefore saying, hey, the war is officially ended. Cease fighting now. That would be useful for Andrew Jackson, the War of 1812. Otherwise, though, this revolutionized the way that Americans can now communicate, because now you could receive messages in a matter of minutes to hours as opposed to weeks upon weeks upon weeks waiting for person-to-person physical contact to deliver a specific message, which may or may not get there. Okay? What made things even more efficient was the idea that messages and communication wire could be built alongside railroads. So, as you're building railroad tracks, you could build a communication wire along those tracks to be able to send messages to various different receiving stations. So typically, as you would have a rail stop along the rail, there would be a receiving station that could be able to decipher messages and whatnot. Around this era, you have the advent of Western Union Telegraph Company. Western Union exists to this day. If you go to like your local supermarket, you might be able to see the yellow and black Western Union sign. where messages or otherwise money even could be sent via wire to somebody else at a different location. You might wire money to a family member in a different country. You might send a message to your relatives in another country. If you've seen the movie Borat, Borat received a message that his wife back in Kazakhstan actually died. My wife is dead. High five! And the guy at the hotel delivered it. It was like, oh. So if you've never seen Borat, maybe go rent it off on Netflix or something like that. You'll see what I'm talking about. Otherwise, though, the way that wires could transport electric messages revolutionized the way that we communicated. Because now things may not necessarily be instant, but they were certainly quick. And that's definitely an upgrade. So, as you have train stations, any small town, city, even small hamlets now would have access to reasonably quick messaging because of Samuel Morse and the Morse code that he developed by way of telegraph. Okay, so we're starting to really revolutionize the way that you communicate. Thank you, America. American innovation right there. Samuel Morse and the Morse code and the telegraph.